It was a quiet evening in the dusty plains of Arizona, where the sun dipped low and painted the horizon with hues of amber and crimson. The air was still, save for the occasional rustle of tumbleweeds rolling across the open expanse. A lone figure sat under the shadow of an old oak tree near a dilapidated ranch, his boots caked with dirt and sweat dripping down his brow. His name was Samuel Harper, a man who had seen more than his fair share of hardship in this unforgiving land. Samuel stared at the horse tied to a post nearby, a noble steed named Blackjack, once proud and strong, now reduced to nothing more than skin and bone. For days, Blackjack had refused food or water, no matter how much Samuel pleaded or coaxed him. It wasn't just stubbornness. It was something deeper, a sorrow etched into the very soul of the animal. Little did Samuel know that unraveling the mystery of Blackjack's despair would lead him on a journey through secrets buried in time and memories long forgotten. The wind carried whispers of the past as Samuel leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He sighed deeply, looking up at the sky as if searching for answers among the stars beginning to twinkle above. "What's wrong with you, boy?" he murmured softly, though the words were lost in the vast emptiness around him. Blackjack merely shifted his weight from one hoof to another, his eyes glazed over with what could only be described as sadness. Days turned into nights as Samuel tried everything he could think of to bring Blackjack back to life. He offered fresh hay, sweet apples, even buckets of cool spring water, but all attempts ended in failure. The horse simply stood there motionless, as if waiting for something or someone that would never come. Frustration gnawed at Samuel, but beneath it lay a growing sense of unease. There was something about Blackjack's behavior that felt unnatural. One fateful morning, as dawn broke over the horizon, Samuel decided to visit the nearby town of Blackwater Springs. Perhaps someone there might have some insight into Blackjack's condition. The small settlement lay nestled against the base of towering mountains, its streets lined with wooden buildings weathered by time and harsh desert winds. As Samuel rode into town, the scent of leather and gunpowder filled the air, mingling with the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting from Mrs. Jenkins' bakery. He dismounted at the general store, tying Blackjack loosely to a hitching rail outside. The townsfolk gave him curious glances, their conversations hushed as they noticed the gaunt appearance of the horse. Samuel ignored them, stepping inside the store to speak with Mr. Thompson, the owner. The man behind the counter looked up, adjusting his spectacles as he greeted Samuel with a nod. "Evening, Sam," Mr. Thompson said gruffly. "What brings you here today?" "I need your help," Samuel replied, his voice tinged with desperation. "Blackjack, he won't eat or drink. I don't know what to do." Mr. Thompson scratched his chin thoughtfully before replying, That ain't normal, especially for a horse like Blackjack. Tell you what, I'll ask around town. Maybe somebody knows something about him." As Samuel waited, he wandered through the bustling streets of Blackwater Springs. He passed by the saloon, where laughter and clinking glasses echoed into the street, and stopped briefly at the blacksmith shop to watch sparks fly as iron met hammer. Yet despite the lively atmosphere, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling of foreboding that lingered in his chest. By late afternoon, Mr. Thompson found him sitting on a bench near the church. "Sam," the storekeeper began, his tone serious, "there's something you should hear. Old man Peterson told me Blackjack used to belong to a man named Thomas Carter. Died about 5 years ago out near Devil's Ridge." Samuel froze, his heart pounding. "Thomas Carter? Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be," Mr. Thompson confirmed. "Peterson said Carter treated that horse like family. Never let anyone else ride him, either. Said it broke his heart when Carter passed away." A cold shiver ran down Samuel's spine. Could it be possible? Was Blackjack mourning the loss of his former owner all these years later? But why now? Why hadn't he shown any signs of distress until recently? Determined to learn more, Samuel headed toward Devil's Ridge, a treacherous stretch of land infamous for its steep cliffs and jagged rocks. The journey took most of the night, the moon casting eerie shadows across the rugged terrain. When he finally reached the site where Thomas Carter was said to have died, Samuel dismounted and scanned the area carefully. Buried beneath layers of dust and debris, he uncovered a weathered photograph lying half buried in the dirt. Picking it up gently, Samuel examined the faded image. It depicted a younger Thomas Carter standing proudly beside Blackjack, both smiling as if captured in a moment of pure joy. Tears pricked at the corners of Samuel's eyes as he realized the significance of what he held in his hands. This picture was the key. Back at the ranch, Samuel approached Blackjack with a photograph clutched tightly in his hand. The horse lifted his head slightly, ears twitching as if sensing something different in the air. Slowly, Samuel extended the photo toward him, allowing Blackjack to see the face of his beloved master once again. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, as if struck by lightning, Blackjack let out a deep, mournful whinny. His legs buckled beneath him, and he collapsed onto the ground, tears streaming down his muzzle. Samuel knelt beside him, stroking his neck as the horse cried openly, releasing years of pent-up grief. But then, something extraordinary occurred. As the tears subsided, Blackjack's demeanor changed entirely. His eyes regained their spark, and his body seemed to fill out before Samuel's very eyes, as though the weight of sorrow had been lifted. By the next morning, the horse was eating ravenously, drinking eagerly, and moving with renewed vigor. Yet the strangest part came later that day, when Samuel discovered a hidden compartment within the saddlebag he'd inherited along with Blackjack. Inside, he found letters addressed to Thomas Carter, each one signed by a woman named Eleanor. Reading them aloud, Samuel learned of a love story cut tragically short, one that explained the depth of Blackjack's bond with his former owner. In that instant, Samuel understood the truth. Blackjack hadn't merely been refusing sustenance because of loneliness. No, it went far beyond that. The horse had been holding on to something greater, a connection so profound that it transcended human understanding. And now, thanks to the photograph, that connection had been rekindled. As the sun set once more over the ranch, casting golden light upon the land, Samuel climbed atop Blackjack and guided him toward the horizon. Together, they rode off into the distance, leaving behind the ghosts of the past and embracing a future filled with hope and promise. For in the Wild West, sometimes the simplest things, a photograph, a memory, could hold the power to heal even the deepest wounds. As the days turned into weeks, Samuel found himself reflecting on the events that had transpired. The ranch, once a place of quiet despair, now buzzed with life and energy. Blackjack, fully restored to his former glory, carried himself with a pride that seemed almost human. Yet beneath the surface, Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to uncover about the horse's mysterious past. One evening, as the stars began their nightly dance across the velvet sky, Samuel sat by the fire pit near the barn. The flames crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the weathered wooden walls. Blackjack grazed nearby, his movements deliberate and calm. But then, as if drawn by some unseen force, the horse suddenly stopped mid-step. His ears perked up, and his head tilted slightly toward the east, where the distant silhouette of Devil's Ridge loomed against the darkening horizon. Samuel noticed a change in Blackjack's demeanor immediately. "What is it, boy?" he asked, rising to his feet. The horse didn't respond, but continued to stare intently at the ridge. Something in that gaze made Samuel uneasy. Little did they know, this moment marked the beginning of another chapter in their intertwined destinies. The next morning, Samuel decided to return to Devil's Ridge, driven by a growing curiosity. Blackjack seemed eager to accompany him, his steps quick and purposeful as they traversed the winding trails leading out of the valley. The air grew cooler as they climbed higher, the scent of pine mingling with the earthy aroma of damp soil. By midday, they reached the base of the ridge, where Samuel dismounted and tied Blackjack to a sturdy tree. It was here, amidst the rocks and scrub brush, that Samuel stumbled upon something unexpected, a hidden cave entrance, partially obscured by fallen branches and vines. Intrigued, he pushed aside the debris and stepped inside, the dim light from outside barely illuminating the narrow passageway. Blackjack whinnied softly from outside, as if urging him forward. Deeper within the cave, Samuel discovered an array of artifacts: old spurs, a rusted lantern, and even fragments of what appeared to be a broken saddle. Among these items lay a leather-bound journal, its cover worn and cracked with age. Carefully opening it, Samuel began reading the entries penned by none other than Thomas Carter himself. The journal revealed details of Thomas's life, his struggles, his dreams, and most importantly, his deep affection for Blackjack. But one entry, dated shortly before Thomas's death, contained a cryptic message that sent chills down Samuel's spine. It spoke of a hidden treasure buried somewhere near Devil's Ridge, left behind for Eleanor, the woman mentioned in the letter Samuel had found earlier. "This changes everything," Samuel whispered to himself, his mind racing with possibilities. Could it be true? Was there really a treasure buried here, waiting to be discovered? Back outside, Blackjack greeted him with a nudge of his nose, as if sensing the weight of the revelation. Samuel mounted the horse, and together they set off to explore the surrounding area. Hours passed as they scoured the landscape, following clues left in the journal. Each step brought them closer to the truth, yet also deeper into danger. Unbeknownst to them, they weren't alone. A group of bandits, led by a ruthless man named Victor Kane, had been watching their every move. Kane had heard whispers of the same treasure, and intended to claim it for himself, no matter the cost. As night fell, the bandits closed in, their presence marked by the faint sound of horses' hooves echoing through the canyon. Samuel and Blackjack found themselves cornered on a rocky ledge overlooking a roaring river below. Lightning illuminated the sky, casting stark contrast between light and shadow. The tension was palpable, each breath heavy with anticipation. Victor Kane emerged in the darkness, his voice dripping with malice. "Hand over the journal, Harper," Kane demanded, his pistol aimed directly at Samuel's chest. "And maybe I'll let you live." But Samuel wasn't about to give up without a fight. With lightning speed, he drew his own weapon, the barrel of his revolver meeting Kane's in a deadly standoff. Blackjack, sensing the urgency, reared up with a thunderous neigh, startling both men and breaking the stalemate. In the chaos that followed, Samuel managed to disarm Kane, using the terrain to his advantage. One by one, the bandits were defeated, retreating into the night like ghosts vanishing into thin air. When the dust finally settled, Samuel stood victorious, though shaken by the encounter. With the threat neutralized, Samuel returned to the task at hand. Following the final clue in the journal, he uncovered a small chest buried beneath a cluster of boulders. Inside lay gold coins, jewels, and a letter addressed to Eleanor. Reading it aloud, Samuel felt a profound sense of closure, not just for Thomas Carter, but for himself and Blackjack as well. As dawn broke over Devil's Ridge, painting the world in hues of pink and gold, Samuel and Blackjack began their journey back to the ranch. They carried with them not only the treasure, but also the knowledge that some bonds transcend time and space. In the Wild West, where life was often harsh and unforgiving, moments like these serve as reminders of the beauty and resilience that could still be found. And so, under the watchful eyes of the heavens, Samuel Harper and Blackjack rode onward, their spirits unbroken and their hearts full of hope. For in this vast, untamed land, anything was possible, if you were willing to believe. The journey back to the ranch was a quiet one, filled with the soft rustle of Blackjack's hooves against the dirt path and the occasional chirp of birds waking with the sunrise. Samuel cradled the chest in his arms, its weight both literal and symbolic. He couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions, relief at having survived the encounter with Kane, awe at the discovery of the treasure, and an inexplicable sense of duty toward Eleanor, whoever she might be now. As they neared the ranch, Samuel's thoughts turned to what he should do next. The letter inside the chest was addressed to Eleanor, dated shortly before Thomas Carter's death. It spoke of love, regret, and a final wish for her to find peace. Could she still be alive? If so, where would she be after all these years? These questions gnawed at him, but he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about treasure anymore. This was about honoring the memory of a man who had loved deeply and lost tragically. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields. Samuel dismounted and led Blackjack to the stable, patting his neck affectionately. "You've earned your rest, boy," he said softly. Then, carrying the chest into the house, he sat down at the worn wooden table in the kitchen and opened the letter once more. Eleanor's name was followed by a last known address, a small town called Willow Creek, nestled near the foothills of the Colorado Rockies. Samuel traced the letters with his fingers, feeling the faint ridges of ink on the paper. Little did he know that this simple piece of information would set him on a path far from home. It took 2 days of preparation before Samuel felt ready to leave. He packed supplies, secured the ranch, and ensured Blackjack was in top condition for the long journey ahead. On the morning of their departure, the air carried a crisp chill, hinting at the changing seasons. As they rode out of the ranch gates, Samuel glanced back one last time, his heart heavy with uncertainty, but also brimming with resolve. The road to Willow Creek was fraught with challenges. They crossed rivers swollen with melting snow, navigated dense forests where the trees seemed to whisper secrets in the wind, and endured nights under skies so vast they made Samuel feel infinitesimally small. Along the way, Blackjack proved himself indispensable, his instincts guiding him through treacherous terrain and unpredictable weather. One evening, as they camped beside a babbling brook, Samuel sat staring into the fire, the journal clutched in his hands. He read aloud excerpts from Thomas Carter's writings, each word painting vivid pictures of a life lived with passion and purpose. "I wonder if Eleanor ever knew how much he loved her," Samuel mused aloud. Blackjack whinnied softly, as if offering comfort, and Samuel smiled faintly. But then, as the flames flickered and danced, a shadow moved in the distance. At first, Samuel thought it was merely a trick of the light, but when the figure stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. It was a woman, her face partially obscured by the hood of her cloak. She approached cautiously, her eyes locked onto fire. "Who are you?" Samuel asked, his voice steady despite the unease creeping into his chest. The woman hesitated before lowering her hood. Her features were striking, sharp cheekbones, piercing green eyes, and silver strands woven through her dark hair. "My name is Clara," she said, her voice tinged with weariness, "and I believe we share a common goal." Samuel frowned. "What do you mean?" Clara gestured to the chest resting beside him. "That treasure. It belongs to my grandmother, Eleanor Carter. Or, rather, it belonged to her. She passed away 3 years ago." The revelation hit Samuel like a punch to the gut. For a moment, he struggled to process the words. "Passed away?" he repeated dumbly. "Then why are you here?" Clara sighed, seating herself opposite him by the fire. "Because my grandmother left behind a mystery. She never spoke of Thomas or the treasure, but I found hints in her belongings, pieces of a puzzle I've been trying to solve ever since. When I heard rumors of someone searching for answers near Devil's Ridge, I knew I had to follow." Samuel studied her carefully, weighing her words against the evidence in his possession. Something in her demeanor rang true, yet caution lingered in his mind. "If what you say is true," he began slowly, "then perhaps we can work together. There's more to this story than either of us knows." Clara nodded, her expression softening. "Agreed. But we must hurry. Others have learned of the treasure, and they won't hesitate to take it by force." Their alliance forged, Samuel and Clara continued their journey with renewed urgency. Together, they pieced together fragments of Eleanor's past, uncovering stories of hardship, resilience, and unyielding love. Along the way, they faced dangers that tested their courage and deepened their bond. Bandits ambushed them in narrow passes, forcing them to fight fiercely to protect the chest. A sudden storm stranded them in a cave, where they shared tales of their lives, finding solace in each other's company. Finally, after weeks of relentless travel, they arrived at Willow Creek. The town was smaller than Samuel expected, its streets lined with quaint cottages and bustling shops. Yet beneath its peaceful exterior lay a hidden tension, whispers of conflict between old families vying for power. Claire explained that her family had once been among the most prominent in Willow Creek, but scandal and tragedy had diminished their influence over the years. As they searched for clues about Eleanor's final days, they encountered unexpected resistance. Some townsfolk refused to speak, while others offered cryptic warnings. One elderly man, however, provided a crucial lead. "Eleanor kept a diary," he told them, his voice trembling. "It's buried in the old churchyard beneath the willow tree." Under cover of night, Samuel and Clara retrieved the diary, its pages yellow with age. Inside, they discovered Eleanor's side of the story, a tale of heartbreak, sacrifice, and eventual acceptance. She wrote of receiving Thomas's letter too late, of mourning a love lost too soon, and of leaving behind a legacy meant to honor his memory. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she read aloud the final entry. "Let no one seek this treasure for greed," she quoted, her voice breaking. "For its true value lies not in gold, but in the love that created it." In the end, Samuel and Clara made the difficult decision to return the treasure to the people of Willow Creek, ensuring it would benefit those in need rather than fall into the wrong hands. As they departed the town, their hearts were lighter, though burdened by the weight of lessons learned. Back at the ranch, Blackjack greeted them with a joyful neigh, sensing the change in their spirits. Samuel climbed atop the horse, gazing out over the endless plain stretching before him. Life in the Wild West was unpredictable, often harsh, but moments like these reminded him of its beauty. The connections formed, the mysteries unraveled, and the strength found in facing the unknown. And so, under the watchful gaze of the stars, Samuel Harper and Blackjack rode onward, their story far from finished. For in this land of untamed wilderness and boundless possibility, every ending was simply the beginning of another chapter. The days that followed their return to ranch were filled with a quiet contentment, though Samuel couldn't shake the feeling that the adventure he and Blackjack had embarked upon was far from over. The treasure they had uncovered and subsequently gifted to Willow Creek had sparked something within him, a deeper curiosity about the stories hidden in the vast expanse of the Wild West. It wasn't just about gold or jewels anymore. It was about the people, the memories, and the legacies buried beneath the dust of time. One morning, as the sun cast its golden rays across the fields, Samuel sat on the porch of his ranch house, sipping coffee and watching Blackjack graze peacefully in the distance. His mind wandered back to Clara, the woman he had met during their journey. She had become more than just an ally. She was a friend, someone who understood the pull of unanswered questions and untold tales. Her parting words echoed in his thoughts. "There are always more stories out there, Samuel. Don't let them go unheard." It was then that he made a decision. He would leave again, not for treasure this time, but for answers. Answers about the lives that had shaped the land around him, the echoes of those who had walked these plains before him. Blackjack seemed to sense the shift in his master's mood, lifting his head and trotting toward the porch. Samuel patted the horse's neck affectionately. "We're not done yet, are we, boy?" he murmured. Their next destination was inspired by a passing comment from one of the townsfolk in Willow Creek. An old man, whose hands trembled as he recounted tales of his youth, had mentioned a place called Shadow Hollow, a valley shrouded in mystery, where whispers of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena had long persisted. Few dared to venture there, but Samuel felt compelled. If nothing else, perhaps he could uncover the truth behind the legends. The journey to Shadow Hollow was arduous, taking them through rugged terrain and testing both man and beast. They crossed rivers so cold they stole the breath from Samuel's lungs, climbed steep cliffs where the wind howled like a banshee, and traversed forests so dense that sunlight barely penetrated the canopy. Each step brought them closer to the heart of the mystery, but also deeper into danger. As they approached the entrance to Shadow Hollow, a thick fog rolled in, obscuring everything beyond a few feet. The air grew heavy, charged with an almost electric tension. Blackjack slowed his pace, his ears twitching nervously. Samuel dismounted, patting the horse's flank reassuringly. "Easy now," he whispered. "We'll face whatever's here together." Inside the hollow, the world seemed different, eerier. Trees twisted unnaturally, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. Strange sounds echoed through the mist, footsteps that didn't match their own, faint whispers carried on the wind. Samuel drew his revolver instinctively, his senses heightened as he scanned the gloom. Then, without warning, a figure emerged from fog. At first glance, it appeared human, a woman, her hair wild and her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. But as she stepped closer, Samuel realized she was no ordinary being. Her form shimmered, translucent, as if caught between worlds. Blackjack reared back, neighing loudly, but Samuel held firm, his gaze locked onto the apparition. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the chill running down his spine. The woman tilted her head, her lips curling into a sad smile. "I am Alara," she said, her voice melodic yet tinged with sorrow. Once, I was a daughter, a sister, a lover. Now, I am trapped here, unable to move on until my story is told. Samuel's heart pounded as he listened to her tale. Decades ago, Alara had lived in a small settlement near Shadow Hollow. When a band of outlaws attacked, she and her family fled into the valley, seeking refuge. But instead of safety, they found death, ambushed by the very men they had hoped to escape. Alara's spirit lingered, bound to the place where her life had ended, waiting for someone to hear her cry. Tears streamed down Samuel's face as he promised to honor her memory. Together, they searched the hollow for remnants of her past, uncovering artifacts that told the tragic story of her family's final hours. With each discovery, the fog began to lift, the shadows retreating as if acknowledging that justice and remembrance had finally come. When they emerged from Shadow Hollow, the world outside seemed brighter, clearer. Blackjack nickered softly, as if sensing the weight lifted from Samuel's shoulders. Yet even as they rode away, Samuel knew this was only the beginning. There were countless other stories waiting to be uncovered, countless other spirits yearning for peace. Over the months that followed, Samuel and Blackjack traveled farther and wider than ever before. They visited forgotten graveyards, abandoned mines, and deserted ghost towns, piecing together fragments of history long buried. Along the way, they encountered others like Alara, spirits tied to places steeped in tragedy, their voices silenced until Samuel gave them a chance to speak. Clara occasionally joined them on these journeys, her knowledge of local lore proving invaluable. Together, the three forged a bond unlike any Samuel had known, united by a shared purpose. And though danger often lurked in the shadows, they faced it head-on, driven by the belief that every story deserved to be heard. One evening, as they camped beneath a star-studded sky, Clara turned to Samuel with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "if we're changing more than just the lives of those we help? Maybe we're changing ourselves too." Samuel smiled, gazing at the flames dancing in the fire. "Maybe we are," he replied, "but isn't that what makes it worth it?" Blackjack whinnied softly, as if agreeing wholeheartedly. And so, under the endless skies of the Wild West, Samuel Harper, Blackjack, and Clara continued their quest, their hearts open to the mysteries of the past and their spirits unbroken by the challenges ahead. For in this untamed land, every ending was simply the beginning of another chapter, and every chapter held the promise of discovery, healing, and hope.